Hi all. We're gonna wait for about 1 or 2 minutes just to make sure everybody's ready to go. Okay, welcome everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. We're definitely excited that you all could join us today for this quite important step for your future studies in France. So I am Emma, and I'm here with my colleague Nicholas, and we're here to explain how the visa application procedure works to come study in France. This is going to last about 30 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session. If you have any questions for the Q&A, please put them in the Q&A section of this call and not in the conversation area so that we don't get too confused. Okay, so I guess we can start. Without further ado, Nicholas, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, seems to be working. Hello, everyone. My name is, as Emma said, my name is Nicholas Ivan. So we both work at Campus France. I'm going to tell you a bit more about what it is. But first, I would like to also thank you personally for attending this session. Once again, we're going to cover a lot of topics today about these applications. Of course, going to be the bulk of our presentation, but uh, at the end, we will also cover other topics such as finding accommodation, healthcare, as well as post-mobility support. So let's stay tuned for that. So yes, first let's introduce ourselves and introduce what we do here at Campus France. So to keep it brief and concise, Campus France is a public institution, French public institution, of course, which is charged with promoting French higher education abroad and welcoming international students and researchers to France. And so Campus France is available and exists throughout the world. And us at Campus France UK, as the name entails, we manage those specific mission, but in the United Kingdom, or anyone residing in the United Kingdom, no matter your nationality. We are currently housed in the French Embassy in London. And yes, so technically we cover a wide array of topics and tasks, but you should always consider us as your go-to contact point for anything related to higher education in France, international mobility, as well as also maybe job-related questions. And even if we can't answer those questions ourselves, we will be able to put you in touch with someone who can. So yes, the presentation itself is going to be split into 5 different sections. The first one, we're just going to quickly cover, go in depth into kind of the different types of visas that you are eligible for, because even though you are all somewhat going to France to study, you may not all be eligible for the same visa. about 90% of you will be eligible for one specific type of visa, which will be at the center of this presentation. But this presentation is also applicable to those applying to the other visas. So yes, we're going to try to go into as much details as possible. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to already post them in the Q&A chat. And the second section of this presentation will be focused on the EEF process. It's the first step of the visa application procedure for student visa. The third section, sorry, will be focused on the general visa procedure called France Visa and TLS. And finally, we will end this presentation on first settling in France. That's where accommodation and healthcare will come into play. And finally, post-mobility support. First, the different types of visas. Today, we're mostly going to focus on one visa, which is called the student VLSTS, or the long-term or long-stay student visa, which is compulsory for all long-term UK residents of any nationality coming to France for a duration of between 3 months and 1 year. You are eligible for this visa if you're coming to France on a degree program. So if some of you are planning on being enrolled in a bachelor's or a master's, for instance, this is the visa you'll need. If you're coming on a PhD without a work contract, also the one you'll need. French intensive programs, and I guess for most of you it will be the case, but a study placement, an exchange, a double degree, a study abroad placement for a semester or a year, generally. And it's also a visa you'll need if you're planning on doing a work placement in addition to a study placement. If you're just going to France on a work placement, aka an internship or traineeship, it's another type of visa, but we'll cover that in a bit. Secondly, the duration. As you've noticed, I've mentioned a visa that lasts from 3 months to a year. So you may already have a couple of questions. Some of you may ask, oh, yes, but if my mobility is shorter than 3 months, what do I do? And others will ask themselves, what if it's longer than 1 year? I'm going to France on a bachelor's, so I will be in France for 3 years, or I'm going on a master's and I'll be in France for 2 years. What am I supposed to do? Is it the right visa for me? Well, yes, it still is the right visa for you. But basically, if your stay is shorter than 3 months, well, whether you need a visa or not kind of depends on your nationality. We'll cover that in a bit. And if your stay is longer than a year, then it's totally fine. It's just that the first year will be covered by that visa, and you'll need to just renew your visa or your what we call titre de séjour locally at your local prefecture in France for the remainder of your studies. So for 2 years, 2 additional years if it's for a bachelor's, or 1 additional a year if it is a master's. And yes, so before we go forward with some more details, you need to know that I'm going to cover mostly the process, the application process from the UK. Some of you may also apply from another country. If it's the case, the process will somewhat be similar, but will vary in some ways. So I'm mostly thinking of you if you're, for instance, you're doing a first semester mobility, let's say in Spain, and you're only planning to go to France on a second semester, then probably you will apply from Spain because you'll be a student there on a student visa. Therefore, you'll be eligible to apply from Spain, as an example. Or maybe you're not British. Let's say you are Indian and you are planning on going to India for the summer to visit your family. Then, since you're a citizen of India or whatever other country you may be from, then you can apply from there. The golden rule is that you can only apply from a country where you have the legal residence or the citizenship. And if that's the case, you can also maybe start the process here and then continue the process in another country. But if that's the case, we need to transfer your file and you need to ask us to transfer the file. But it's very specific. If some of you are in this situation, I'll be more than happy to go further into this topic during the Q&A section. So I mentioned that sometimes you won't need a long-term student visa. What are the cases when you won't need that visa or will need another visa? Well, some of you may be EU citizens, French, German, but also Irish, Romanian, Polish. Then as an EU citizen, as the principle of the EU entails, you don't need a visa. So you can just go to France as you would if you were French, let's say. Some of you may also go to France on an internship only, meaning that you won't be registered specifically in a university once in France. So because you won't be registered in a university in France, it's not a student visa per se that you're going to apply for. It's another visa called the student trainee visa. And you will need to justify that visa with what we call an internship contract, also called in French, convention de stage. For those of you that are concerned by this situation, the first step we're going to go through, the EF process, is not applicable to you. You can then start from step 2. More on that later. And finally, some of you may go to France on a short-term mobility. Well, as I've told you, for some reason you may need a visa, for some other reasons you may not. If you're British or American or Canadian, for instance, you don't need a visa because you are what we call visa-exempt nationalities, meaning that you can come to France or any EU country for less than 3 months, i.e. 90 days, for any reason, just without a visa, as long as you haven't been to France in let's say the last 2-3 months. The general rule is that you can only go to France without a visa for up to 3 months every 6 months. So it kind of resets every 6 months. And some of you, maybe Chinese because you're Indian or Pakistani, you may need what we call a short stay visa. Then it's not specific to students, but you need to apply to a short stay visa. In that case, like with the student trainee visa, you can just skip step 1 and we'll see each other again during step 2. So what is the step 1 I've been mentioning so far? So the EF process, let's cover that. The EF process stands for Études en France. Études en France just means study in France. It's handled by us at Campus France and is designed to evaluate your academic background and study plan. So our work is kind of to ensure that your mobility, whether it is a degree-seeking mobility or study placement, for instance, an exchange, it kind of aligns with your academic records. Let's kind of cut to the chase here, but it's kind of to prevent fraud, detecting false documents and fraud to visas. So it also allows us to collect anonymized data to better understand mobility trends, to also, help us adapt strategies, to promotion strategies, but also to understand your needs better, to make sure that those webinars and those information sessions are as complete and thorough as possible. And there's a specific fee linked to that process. It's £110, which may be halved to £55 if you are a Turing recipient, and which can also be waived entirely if you're in a more specific situation. I won't go too deep into it, but basically when you complete the Études en France application, you'll know which special status allow you to waive that fee. And once this process is completed, once again, it's a process that allows us to understand your academic background. You'll get a document that is called the EF certificate or EF Pastel certificate, which will be a required or compulsory document for the overall visa applications a bit later on. So what do you need during that part of the process? Well, obviously you need a passport that is valid during the visa, or at least the visa you're applying for, which makes sense, but also 3 months after the end of your visa. This is to cover you in case you want to remain in France, at least for those who do not need a short-term visa. So to cover you while you remain in France for up to 90 days after the end of your visa. Secondly, an ID photograph. self-explanatory. If you're not British, a proof that you are legally resident in the UK, such as the biometric resident permit, as well as the share code. And now what helps us understand your background? Well, a CV. And so kind of depends on your situation, but a proof of enrollment of your current institution or your latest diploma, whichever one is more applicable to your situation. We kind of need to know that because if you're going to France on a study placement in the context of your degree course, then we need to make sure that you're actually in the degree course you're saying you are in, and that you're obviously going to France as part of that course. And finally, the most important document, the admission letter, but this one will be given to you if it has not been issued to you actually already. It's a letter from the host institution in France that outlines who you are and the context of your mobility and the duration of your mobility. This document will allow us to, well, decide on the duration of your visa. This admission letter can only be issued by the host institution in France and cannot be issued by your institution in the UK, nor can it be an email. So if you haven't gotten it already, it's fine. Universities are still kind of rolling out those admission letters. Some universities may send them sometime in June, so it's not too late, but you will need that document anyway. Okay, so now we've covered this process, so step one, might as well move on to step two. So if anyone here is coming is also applying to a student trainee visa or a short-term visa, you can come back and stop your nap, and we're back into business. So step two is the France visa process. You have to see it as kind of like the process applicable to all. Where Études en France was specifically for student visas, the France visa process is kind of the process everyone will go through for any type of visa to France. This part of the process can only be done maximum 3 months before the start of your mobility. So if your mobility starts on the 1st of September, then you can only start this process on the 1st of June. And you'll need 2 additional documents. You'll need a proof of accommodation. It could be, of course, a rental agreement or lease. And don't worry, we already know that some of you may not have acquired long-term accommodation by June. It's totally fine and normal. So we have other options available to you. One is if you may be planning on staying with family or friends, they can write and draft a sworn statement as well as supporting documents that they're actually living where they say they're living, such as, I don't know, like a utility bill or their own rental agreement. But if it's not also possible for you because you don't know anyone in France yet, it's also fine. You can book a hotel or Airbnb for the first 3 weeks of your stay, of your visa, with the option, to cancel for free, so you don't pay up front. That way, if you end up finding accommodation sometime before you actually move to France, then you can just cancel the hotel room and you don't have to pay for it. I'll be more than happy to answer more questions on that topic a bit later on. And the second document, also a bit tricky to get, is a proof of financial means. This one, basically, if you're going to France for 10 months, so you're applying for a visa that lasts 10 months, then you need to prove that you have 6,150 euros available. 615 euros per month. So it's about £500. So how can you do that? Your own bank statements, a sponsor, maybe your parents' bank statement, or if you are going to France on a scholarship, you can use that, Turing scholarship or a university scholarship, or you can also use your maintenance loan. However, the document needs to show that it's the maintenance loan specifically for next year. We need to make sure that you're going to actually get that money while you're on your mobility or wherever you're going. If you don't have any of that, we can just don't hesitate to just send us an email. We'd be more than happy to advise you on what kind of documents you can find to complete this part of the process. Okay, and of course, every document we've mentioned so far is important here. If you're going on a short stay mobility, you will need your acceptance letter from the host institution in France. And if you're only coming to France on an internship, then obviously the internship contract. The whole process costs 50 euros. So currently it's about 42 pounds. And step 3, the final step of the process, the visa appointment. Step 1 and step 2 can all be done online, remotely. This one, you'll need to go outside, go to either London, Manchester, or Edinburgh, and attend your visa appointment. Those visa appointments are managed by a third party called TLS Contact. They manage those kind of appointments for about 15 different countries. And their job is just to gather all the documents you've had to collect so far and make sure everything is in order. There's a booking fee. I've written £76 because that's the latest one I found, but depending on availability and where it is, I think the booking fee varies. So I don't really know how much it is or how much you will end up paying. But this appointment is very important, and you need to make sure that you have everything printed with you during the appointment. Why am I putting so much emphasis on that? Why? It's because actually TLS needs to make sure that you have everything. If you don't have everything, TLS will just tell you to reschedule your appointment, come back later with the necessary documents that you're missing. It means that you'll need to rebook an appointment, meaning you'll have to pay the booking fee a second time. It's unfortunate, but that's how TLS Contact manages their business. So please make sure you have gathered all the documents we mentioned during step 1 and step 2 to attend your TLS Contact appointment. And at the appointment, you will need to hand over your passport, which may be retained for up to 3 weeks maximum. They can also keep an eye on your passport for less than that, but the waiting time to get your passport back can be up to 3 weeks. All in all, let's review everything on a timeline because it's easier and more comprehensive. The first step, Études en France, takes about 2 to 3 days because you need to fill in your application, send it to us, we review it. And once we've reviewed it and we made sure that you're eligible to the visa, we then send you a payment link. And then to validate your payment link, we need about 1 day. But it actually goes quite fast. Once you've completed the Études en France process, you can just do the France visa process, which takes about 1 to 2 days, or however long you'll need to gather the documents we've mentioned. And then you can, then it depends. Depends when the earliest appointment is, because you'll need to book your appointment at the TLS Contact Center. Let's assume you're going to have to wait 2 weeks to actually have an appointment slot. Then you wait 2 weeks, and you go to a TLS Contact appointment. Everything is in order. They take all your documents and they take a hold of your passport, which they will keep with them for 3 weeks while we print the visa and stick it into it. And after 3 weeks, you will get your passport back in the mail. And once you've gotten your passport back, you can go to France. So it's once again, it's illustrative timeline. Can be shorter, can be longer, but let's say the whole process can take between 4 to 6 weeks maximum. And I guess the last part of the process, the step 3, is the most important one, because as you've understood, you won't have your passport for 2 to 3 weeks, let's say. So you won't be able to leave the country. So if you've already planned holidays this summer, you'll need to work around your holidays plan to make sure you can afford to stay in the UK for 2 to 3 weeks without a passport. I'll be more than happy to answer questions on this topic a bit later. But that's it. That's the whole visa process. It's not as complicated as you might think. It's a lot of information, but it's very linear. You do step one. Then at the end of step one, you'll actually get another email telling you to do step two. At the end of step two, they tell you how to do step three. And that's it. That's quite straightforward. In the end, you'll pay in between 200 and 230 pounds, which is a lot of money. But as a comparison, if you want to know, if you were French and planning to study in the UK and you would go through that same process, you would pay between 500 and 700 pounds. So yes, we're not going to go into visa questions quite yet. We're just going to cover the final part of this presentation as quickly as possible. We're first going to focus on accommodations. Some of you may have already gotten some information on this specific topic from the university you'll be attending in France, or school you'll be attending in France. But there's different options available to you. The first one is housing in university residence, which is managed by an entity called Crous, which is the main public service in France that provides affordable student housing. There's a specific process that I won't describe, but I wanted to give you some of my own insight on this process. Housing in university residence is super cool, but it's mostly targeted to low-income students and no matter your nationality. So low-income students, international or French. And there's a limited amount of university residents. So if you know that you're already not technically in a low income category, you can apply to it. There's no worry. Don't worry about that. But probably you won't be able to secure university accommodation in university residence. But that's fine. That's not the most widespread option that is out there. Obviously, you can try the housing in the private market. The price of the rent varies. Of course, Paris is more expensive than any other cities. And I've listed a couple of websites that are of particular interest to you, just under, so they're called Se Loger, Logiste, De Particulier à Particulier, or Le Bon Coin. And finally, which to me is my favorite option, because that's the one I've went through, the one I've used when I was a student in France. So it's the colocation. The colocation is just the French name for flat share or house share. It's the best, it's the most fun, most convenient, most affordable option, because generally it gives you the option to meet French and foreign students alike. It's generally much cheaper, much closer to city centers. And it's also a very good last resort option, as flat shares can be secured really fast. Once again, other websites that you can use, I would recommend specifically La Carte des Colocs, which I've used extensively, and which is really good for actually talking to the flatmates you may be staying with. So on La Carte des Colocs, the other flatmates actually decide who moves in with them. And so it's a more laid back way to find some kind of accommodation from abroad, which is a challenge. We understand that. So of course, as finding accommodation from abroad can be a challenge, let me tell you the major don'ts when finding accommodation or when looking for accommodation. First, please don't send money or sign a lease without verifying the accommodation, because especially in Paris, but throughout the country and in other countries, obviously, scams are common. So never send any money or sign a lease before you have seen the place, either in person or through a verified virtual tour, which are often offered by realtors. And if something feels off, of course, it's probably because it is. And my personal advice to you is that you will, of course, generally be asked to pay a security deposit. And by law, however, the security deposit cannot exceed 2 months of rent. So if you see that the security deposit you're being asked for is more than 2 months of rent, then you know it's a scam, because it's not legal, or at least it's not legal to do so, and the landlord can be called out on it. And that's where colocation and flat shares are actually better, because usually in flat shares, you don't pay anything before you actually move in. You move in, and that's on the first day where you wire the first months of rent and the security deposit. So once again, I highly encourage you to do so. Second tip, don't ignore the need for a French guarantor. This is mostly for the people looking for private accommodation in the private market, because most landlords will require a French guarantor, meaning someone that is French, living or working in France. So could be also like a British person, but living and working in France. That can cover your rent. It's a guarantor, right? Two options. Of course, you can find a guarantor if you have one in your life. But if you don't, it's also very possible, like most likely would be your case. There's actually a lot of different schemes, including one government scheme called Visal, where if you fit in the prerequisites of the program, the government and the state serves as your guarantor. But there's different prerequisites, and if you don't comply with the Visal prerequisite, you can still subscribe to other services, which may be fee paying, but they still exist. And finally, very quickly, don't skip on home insurance. This is mandatory in France, but you can do that once you've secured the accommodation. You can subscribe to home insurance through insurance companies or through your bank whenever you open a French bank account. Healthcare, also very quickly. Healthcare, I'm just going to compare it with the NHS. That way you know how it works. We also have free universal healthcare in France, but it works a bit differently. Our NHS is called Amélie. And when you move to France, no matter how long you're going to be staying in France for or your nationality, you can register with Amélie. There's a dedicated site for foreign students in English. And you can your application can be processed in about approximately 10 days. But then once you're registered, how does it work? Well, you will be treated the same way as any other French person, meaning that you typically, contrary to NHS, you pay for medical treatment up front, and you get a refund of 70% of the amount by Amélie. And if you want a larger and more complete reimbursement, you need to subscribe to a complementary health insurance called Mutuelle. And some of you may already think, oh, I don't need that. I have actually one of the two cards that are displayed below. You can also do that. You can just not register with the French NHS, Amélie, but you can just have either, if you have the EU nationality, the European Health Insurance Card or the UK Global Health Insurance Card. But in both those cases, you will need to pay 100% of the fees upfront and only get the refund once you're back in your home country and you make a claim. In the UK, it's with the NHS Overseas Healthcare Service. But I would highly recommend you to register with Amélie because sometimes universities make it a requirement. And also because when you register, you also get a code, like a number, like a registration number that you can use to also access other essential administrative services in France. And for everything else, I'm not going to go too deep into it because once again, we don't have the time. But that's where your universities and host institutions come in. Maybe you've already been in contact with the global engagement team of the host institution, and they're very much able to help you. But also, depending on in which city or which university you'll be joining, you can also have access to services from a welcome desk, which are dedicated service points where they kind of centralize all essential help for foreign students, such as everything we've mentioned so far, like accommodation, healthcare, but also visa validation, bank account, housing, administrative procedures, but also just everyday matters in general. Those welcome desks are comprised of staff, but also from other students, either French or foreign, that dedicate their time to helping you. So take advantage of it. And I see that it's 5:34, so I'm just going to spend the next 2 minutes to explain to you the post-mobility support because it's a long way from now. But basically, going to France and coming back to the UK doesn't mean that your experience with us ends. You can also benefit from our services even after your mobility. So once you're back in the UK, you can join the France Alumni Network, which is a kind of a network of alumni of the French education system, no matter your nationality, whether you're British, French, or whatever, as long as you're in the UK. But the France Alumni Network is actually available worldwide. And it allows you to connect, of course, with other like-minded people who went through the same thing you went through. but also to have access to exclusive events. So when you register with France Alumni for free, of course, you'll get invitations to events dedicated to our community. You can also try and get more involved and become an ambassador, meaning that you'll help us at Campus France share your experience. So you can make videos, you can accompany us on let's say, university visits or student fairs to just share your experience. And you'll be able to be as truthful as you want. And that's kind of the point, to make it some kind of semi-mentoring opportunity. And when you become an ambassador, of course, you have access to the same benefits as France Alumni, but with other exclusive events, including some at the French Embassy in the UK. And yes, and if maybe you found your mobility well more than enjoyable in France, and you're actually looking forward to moving back to France for maybe a longer stay, we can also help you apply to French higher education, to masters, to PhDs. We can help you find a program that is more fitting to you, like I don't know, maybe if it's entirely taught in English, very much available. And it's much more affordable than in the UK. UK residents and non-EU citizens in general pay about 3,700 euros per year for a master's, for instance, and it's even less than that for a PhD. So it's much more affordable in the UK, and a master's in France is recognized as a master in the UK. So it's not like it won't be translated into the UK system once you move back and decide to move back, maybe after your studies. But if you'd like more information on that topic, please feel free to send us emails now or maybe sometime next year, and to book one-on-one appointments with us. But whatever happens, I just wanted to tell you that your experience will be useful to you, because Universities UK, so UK institution, has provided the data that shows that an experience abroad gives you a better job prospects, higher starting salary, and better skills for the work world. Sorry, and the presentation. My vocabulary is all completely absent. But yes, whatever you're going to do next year, it will be valuable, and you'll see the repercussion throughout your whole life. So thank you everyone for listening to me. So you have all our information, contact information on the screen right now. And yes, we can move on to the Q&A section.
Thank you, Nicholas. There's already been quite a few questions in the Q&A, and I have answered a lot. So if you have already asked a question in the Q&A, do check if I've answered it. In the meantime, we have a question about translating birth certificates or any kind of documents for the visa process, Nicholas.
So translating documents is actually not mandatory, which is the good thing, because we don't, everyone in France, or obviously here at the French Embassy in the UK, but everyone in France is able to read English, so you won't have any issue with French documents. At least our process doesn't require any translation, which is good. It's not the case necessarily for other countries or the languages, I mean. So if you have other documents, needed documents for the process that are in other languages, such as, I don't know, Spanish, German, Russian, whatever, you'll need to have those translated either in French or in English. But apart from that, that's actually quite straightforward. We don't ask you for any translations.
How long does it take to register with Amélie, and is it worth it for someone studying only for one semester?
So whenever you can apply when you move to once you're in France, because you need to have a proof that you're enrolled, and you enroll at the university and get the documents for official enrollments only when you're in person there. So from that point on, if you apply on the same day, you get registered with Amélie in about 10 days. So I think to me it's worth it. Otherwise, if you're only for a semester and you're fine with just paying everything up front just apply for a JIC card and make sure you claim your reimbursement with the NHS once you're back. But there's one thing I didn't mention because it's a whole process, but I think it's not really worth it if you're here for a semester. But there's a scheme available to everyone called APL, which helps you cover part of your housing expense. It's a welfare scheme, even available to you even if you're an exchange student for a year. But sometimes the processing of the APL application can take a while, and I often don't recommend it for people staying just for a semester. So in the end, I'd say that perhaps it's not necessary. It's not compulsory. So you can also do without.
If I'm a British student who isn't working in France, will I need to open a French bank account? That's more or less up to you. What you can do, and which we recommend quite often, is to open an online bank like Revolut, where you'll be able to change the money from like pounds to euros quite easily. So especially if you're not planning on working, that's definitely something you can do. What documents do I need to print and bring to the visa appointment? We highly recommend that you print every single document that you have been asked for during the process. So that includes all the EF documents as well as the France visa documents. Nicholas, do you want to add something?
So yes, and very quickly, if I have to list every single document you'll need in one straight list, yes. So your passport, obviously, ID photograph, CV, current proof of enrollment or diploma, admission letter from the host institution in France, proof of accommodation, proof of financial means of support, legal status in the UK if you're not British, so 7-8 documents, and the EF certificate, so the certificate you get at the end of the step 1. So that's kind of 8 or 9 documents. And if you have other documents printed that you think are useful, just print. My tip would be to just print everything and always have everything on you. That way, even if you don't submit everything and give everything away to the TLS contact center, it's at least you're not going to be asked to come back later. Sometimes if it's just about printing documents, I know that TLS can print them for you, but TLS doesn't make it free. They charge you for whatever needs printed, and I think it's quite expensive. So once again, print everything.
Can my French guarantor be someone living in the UK but a French citizen?
They need to be working in France. They need to be working in France with their French, because it's actually way too complicated in terms of insurance, actually. So yes, they need to be in France for that.
Sorry, there's a lot of questions. If I'm applying to the English language assistantship program, does that count as a study placement, a study abroad, a work placement, or a FLE when applying for a student visa?
So actually, I didn't mention them today. Language assistants are something very different because language assistants are work placement, but you'll need to have a work contract. But it's a very special kind of work contract. So normally, if you're going through the British Council to do that, normally they'll tell you what to do. But it's a specific visa. It's none of the visas we've mentioned so far.
Sorry. Someone just wants to confirm that the EEF is a compulsory step when applying for a visa. Yes, absolutely. If you want to have a student visa specifically, then you will need the EEF certificate, which can only be delivered to you if you follow that step. Do the finances need to remain in the bank account for a certain amount of days before the bank statement is issued?
If you're worried about, for instance, just money moving around a lot, it just needs to be at one point, let's say within the month that you're applying for the visa. Or you can just provide different proofs of different accounts. But honestly, at this point, people will just think, yeah, you have the money because it's just moving around so much. So honestly, if you in your head, you're like, oh no, I have more than one bank account, you already have your answer, because you're already in a certain, you already have kind of a certain privileged financial status. So you'll be fine.
Is the visa valid from the first day of the university semester or a bit before? If you went to France a few days before the semester starts or stayed after it ended, would it be included in the visa or count towards the 90 days? So the visa will be valid for the exact dates of your study program. So if your study program starts on the 1st of September, then it will start on the 1st of September and end the same way when your study program stops. If you plan on going to France a bit before or a bit after, yes, you need to take into account your 90 days Schengen allowance. So if you already use all of them up, you won't be able to use them again. But if you haven't, then go crazy. Does Student Finance London cover tuition fees and maintenance as usual, or are there any other fees?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Does Student Finance London cover tuition fees and maintenance as usual, or are there any other fees?
Second time, please.
Maybe so I don't personally understand the question, so maybe let's just skip it, and whoever wrote it can just either email us or write it in the chat again. Do you need a French guarantor if you're staying with a host family?
Most likely, if you're staying with a host family, is that they're taking responsibility for you. So host family means that you're also technically, it's a different type of situation because you're not signing a lease normally, I think, with a host family. It's kind of a different status. So you don't need a guarantor because you're not technically, living by yourself. You'll be living with that family. So that's kind of on them to take the responsibility for you because you'll be staying with them. It's actually also one of the easiest way to move into France, other than the colocation. So yeah, you don't need to worry about that. It's actually quite straightforward.
And again, on guarantors, do we need a guarantor for a flat share?
Generally, no. Sometimes yes, it depends, but also flat shares are aware that you just are a foreign student and they won't necessarily ask you for a guarantee or protection. But once again, if they ask for it, you have the visa option and you have all the fee paying options. But the visa options, honestly, I think you'll all be eligible. The main issue is the age. If you're, I think, older than 28, you can't apply to visa. But if you're younger than 28, you'll be fine.
Is there any need for a DBS check, criminal record check documents, as there are for other countries' application?
Everything we mentioned so far is the only thing you'll need. So, and the background checks, we won't tell you how they happen. So we just provide the information we've listed today.
If you register for Amélie and are therefore covered 70% of the medical expenses, can you claim the other 30% through the GHIC when you get back?
You can, I'm just kind of on the edge because I know that NHS wants everything covered. They don't like when and Amelie doesn't like also when there's like two different systems kind of over the other. So honestly, I would suggest you do one or the other, but not expect NHS to pay for those 30%. Also because I think it's going to be harder for them to justify it for them. So you just need to provide, oh yes, but I've paid this. And then they're going to tell you, okay, then we need to do what math to just reimburse you. No, we need the documents that tell me what you need reimbursed. So I guess it can be done, but most likely if it's asked too much processing from them, they'll just refuse it.
If my acceptance letter says that I start at the university on the 1st of September, can I ask my visa to start a week or two before to be able to settle before university starts? No, your visa, once again, only is applicable for the exact start and finish dates of your study periods. You can still come to France a week or two before if you haven't used all your 90 days Schengen allowance. If my proof of accommodation is an Airbnb or hotel, I will only have a booking confirmation email. Will that be sufficient proof?
Whatever you have that you get from the hotel. So yes.
You said you didn't ask for a CV, or rather motivational statement for your study placement in France. Do I still need to submit a CV, or is the motivational statement enough?
CV, because we need to make sure we have everything adjacent is correct. We're not going to go too deep into it because we won't tell you how we kind of analyze your data and your CV, but we need a CV.
Can you apply for another type of French visa once you are already in France?
Yes, it's the same way as you would, for instance, if you need a renewal after your first year and you need to stay in France for maybe 2 more years or 1 more year, you can apply to another student visa, but this one will be called titre de séjour for the remainder of the program. You also have different visas that are, what we would imagine as the graduate route when you graduate. So there's, for instance, one visa, of course, the name escapes me right now, but it's a visa that allows you to stay for up to a year without like kind of a job seeking visa. So you don't need to have a job lined up to apply for this visa, but it allows you to stay in France for up to a year to look for work. And then you can apply to for a work visa. And if you are on a study placement, you can apply to a tourist visa, maybe, but most likely the prefecture, so the local administrative unit that provides those documents, will ask you to go back to the UK to do that. So it depends on your situation.
How long does it take to get a reply from the Crous if I have secured a room or not?
There's two phases. There's one main phase and a complementary phase. And it will, let's say, one phase will happen around June, end of June, early July, and a second phase in late July, early August. So it's yeah, it's can take a time. It can take. I guess what's your following question could be, well, if I need to wait that long to have a accommodation confirmation, I may not have time to apply for the visa. And to that, I'm going to say yes. That's, some things don't really fit well with each other, with one another. So yes, sometimes if you have to wait too long to get confirmation from the Crous, you can always do the hotel room reservation in advance, and to secure your visa beforehand, or you can just wait until the Crous tells you if it's possible or not. But honestly, I'm going to tell you, as British, once again, I don't know your specific situation, but if you're British middle class, most likely you will never get a Crous accommodation.
How long can it take to secure an appointment with TLS? Should we book it even if step 1 or 2 have not been completed?
You can't book it if step 1 or 2 has been completed. Well, because when you log on to the TLS Contact website, they're going to ask you if you've completed the France visa process. So step 2. Then won't ask you for step 1 because once again, step 2 makes sure that you have completed step 1, and then step 3 make sure you have completed step 2. So no, I know that this, once again, I'm not going to tell you how. I know it's possible to book an appointment before everything's been completed, but it's my moment, my time in the presentation to share with you horror stories. Every year, I have students calling me on my phone, well, work phone, obviously, panicking because they are at the TLS center and they've just realized that, oh my God, I've not completed step 1. I've not done Études en France. So for a while, we actually kind of fast-tracked it, like unofficial fast-tracked it. So we tried to do everything through the phone, complete the information, and trusted them to pay the processing fee for Études en France later, after they completed the TLS appointment. Sometimes people abide and do pay when it's done. Some people take longer than expected, and we have to go out of our way to freeze their application at the consulate, or to just write down in their file that asking the consulate to just reject the application. And sometimes we can't, because sometimes we're on lunch break and nobody's going to be there to answer the phone. So you're just going to be dialing, and nobody's going to answer. It's going to be even worse for you. And especially at one point, just to preserve our own sanity, and also because we want for you to have your visa. We want you to go to France in due time. We don't want you to pay additional booking fees, and we don't want you to arrive on your exchange late. But we're not going to sacrifice our own well-being for that. And so recently, we've decided that if someone calls us to say that, oh my God, I need someone to urgently help me with the Études en France process, we're just going to tell you, you're going to have to rebook your TLS appointment, unfortunately. So yes, once again, technically possible, but if you do so, be prepared for that.
For the confirmation of end date, if we don't know this exact date, so the end date, due to exam timetables, should we put the date that when all the exams finish? So usually most acceptance letters will give you an exact end date, which will be the one you'll indicate. If they don't, it's usually because some universities have their programs saved on the Études en France platform, and in that case, the end date will be automatically put into the portal. But if that's not the case, we do recommend that you contact your university to ask them for an acceptance letter with the exact beginning and end dates for visa purposes. When will the acceptance letters from the French university be sent out so we can apply for our visa? That's entirely up to the universities. And if you think they should have done so already, then we highly recommend you contact them to ask that question to them directly, because we don't have any information on that. But it should be pretty soon, honestly, because we're getting to that time. Nicholas, you want to add something?
Universities do that twice a year because they roll out those letters for both people coming on September and people coming on in January. So they're used to doing this process. So normally, if they haven't issued it yet, it's because they haven't issued it to anyone. I guess your main sign that something goes wrong is that maybe you know someone else that has received the letter, but you haven't. That's normally not possible, and maybe it's in your spam, or maybe there was a problem with the rollout at the university. Some of those problems can happen. It's very rare, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. And once again, even though you can start the visa process 3 months before, doesn't mean that you need to start the process 3 months before. Some universities issue letters in July, and you'll be fine. Depends on each university.
Should you apply for the visa or the cruise accommodation first?
Depends. Cruise is if you want to make sure you have secured cruise accommodation. Honestly, I would highly recommend you to just apply for the visa first. It's the most time-sensitive one, especially with passports issues. Always try that one first. And if you have not secured the cruise accommodation, you can just book the hotel. And then once you've secured cruise accommodation after the visa appointment, you can just cancel the hotel and you'll have cruise accommodation lined up.
Okay, thank you everyone for all your questions, but unfortunately that's all the time we have for today. If your question has not been answered today and you really want an answer, first we really recommend you check out our website, which is on the slide that you can see right now. This has most of the information that you're looking for, and if it really doesn't, then you're more than welcome to email us or book an appointment online where we'll be able to give you more one-on-one help. Nicholas, do you have any final words?
Well, yeah, thank you everyone for bearing with us so far. And once again, yes, we're available for any questions you might have.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.